I don't know why I am so nervous about this. Okay, hey, here we go. Ha! Hello, Kindred. I know a lot has just gone on in the Lore Olympus comic, and I'm sure a lot of people came going, oh, is she gonna talk about it? I will, but not in this video. See, today is Samhain, and I realized I really want to share a bit about that with you. My name is Kiri Callaghan, and we're talking magic witches. So my usual disclaimer with this is paganism is kind of different for every practitioner. So how I practice and what I ascribe to does not apply to every pagan, and it certainly doesn't apply to everyone who identifies as a witch. And again, as we've talked about before when discussing Lore Olympus, there are many, many mythologies out there, even about single pantheons or single deities. So those will also vary, and the ones you ascribe to may not be the same that I ascribe to. I really just like the word ascribe, I'm realizing. I'm a bit nervous. A little bit about me. I identify as a pagan and as a witch who practices primarily green and chaos magic. What the heck does that mean? To oversimplify for the sake of time, my spiritual practices revolve around two basic principles. One, nature is where I draw and find most of my spirituality. That's the green magic bit. And two, ultimately magic is about intent and energy, and the form you decide to focus on is rather irrelevant so long as energy, purpose, and intent are clear to you. That's the chaos bit. For instance, it's very common for witches to focus on certain pantheons. Some actually pick and choose from different pantheons depending on who speaks to them the most. In chaos magic, essentially, since it's what matters to you and how you best channel your energy, you could, theoretically, pray to Dwight Schrute for a successful closure on a deal if Dwight Schrute truly and sincerely embodied that aspect to you. I know it sounds silly, because I chose a really ridiculous example to get my point across. But if the genuine and sincere intent is there, in chaos magic, that's all that matters, not the road that took you there. Okay, so now you at least have a surface level glance at where I'm coming from. Let's talk about Samhain! Originally marking the last harvest of the year, Samhain starts in the Northern Hemisphere at sunset on October 31st and ends at sunset on November 1st. As a side note, which I think is kind of cool, because us in the Northern Hemisphere don't tend to think about this that much, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere right now, you might be preparing to celebrate Beltane. Because for you, even though it's October, Persephone is returning from the underworld and it's starting to be spring. Now, there are some practitioners in the Southern Hemisphere who still like to celebrate Samhain in October, but it's pretty typical to sort of shift it so that you're actually celebrating with the seasons rather than in the month of October. So while I'm about to celebrate Samhain, my dear friend Des, who lives in Australia, is about to have Beltane, which is pretty cool. You might hear Samhain referred to as the Witch's New Year, which is both true and kind of misleading in my opinion. Now, it is the last Sabbath of the witch's year. It's really more marking the beginning of the end as the days get darker and darker until we reach the longest night of the year, otherwise known as winter solstice or Yule. And that's when the earth gets reborn again. Samhain is a celebration of an end. While some things are going into hibernation, other things are coming to an end of their life cycle. It is an embrace of death of sorts, and in that way I suppose it has got a very macabre or morbid reputation, but it's really not morbid at all. In a similar fashion to Dia de los Muertos, Samhain celebrates death as part of a cycle of life and the life that came before, including honoring the dead and those who've come before us. Samhain is a time to reflect on the past year. It's a time for introspection, to really focus on those seeds we were able to harvest and those we weren't. Almost as if we're little annual flowers that need to go back under the soil and rest until we're ready to pop our heads back out again. Both Samhain and Beltane deal with the transitional phases of death and rebirth, and so it's when the veil is thinnest between the worlds. For me, those times are when Persephone is making her descent into the underworld, or when she's ascending to meet with her mother. Because the veil is thinner during this time, both holidays are considered prime opportunities to communicate with the other side, whatever that might be for you. I often use Samhain as a way to honor those in my life who have passed, and to communicate with spirits, who are not to be confused with ghosts, communicate with fae or deities. Which brings me to Hecate. Hecate is a dark goddess of the moon, witchcraft, the night, magic, ghosts, and necromancy. She was the only child of the titans Perseus and Asteria, from whom she received her power over the heavens, earth, and sea. Now, when I say dark goddess, I do not mean evil. In regards to magic, if I can sort of borrow from Hamlet for a minute, 'tis neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. Magic is a tool. It's not inherently good, it's not inherently evil. It's how you use it. So despite the fact that Hecate may deal in sort of darker arts or darker magics, it does not necessarily immediately equal she's evil. I'm a firm believer in balance and that you need to have the dark and the light in order to be balanced. I'm like a gray Jedi. What? Back to the point. It was Hecate who assisted Demeter in her search for Persephone, guiding her through the night with flaming torches. After Demeter and Persephone reunited, Hecate became Persephone's companion while she was in the underworld. There are a lot of myths around Persephone, and some are far less flattering than others. But for me personally, I always liked the idea of the kidnapping possibly not have been a kidnapping at all, but perhaps the verbiage of a distraught and potentially overprotective mother. Which is probably why Lore Olympus resonates with me so much. Greek mythology is not kind to women. We don't need to sugarcoat that. Despite its potentially horrific beginnings, depending which version of the myth you read, at the core of their relationship, Persephone and Hades did seem to love each other, even in the old mythology, which is kind of astounding given the fact that no one really seemed to be in a happy marriage among the gods. I mean, there's Eros and Psyche, but she was immortal, so yes, for me, I ascribe to the mythology where Persephone had more agency, and their marriage didn't begin, with a felony. Anyway, back to Hecate. Hecate is generally accepted to be a Hellenic goddess, but she seems to predate the Olympic gods and may have originated in Asia Minor, which is pretty cool. Throughout history, Hecate's influence has encompassed pretty much everything. In Hellenic tradition, she's free from the constraints that bind the other gods. That is, they're bound to the realms in which they reside. Hecate has rulership over the earth, the sky, the sea, and can freely move throughout them. She rules over all the useful herbs, whether they're poisonous, they're healing, or magical. And she governs the knowledge of sorcery, witchcraft, and necromancy. Masks would be placed at crossroads to honor Hecate's many faces. Offerings were left to her to help with changes of course. She's also invoked as a bestower of wealth and favor. Hecate is the patron of witches, but she's been more recently honored by Dianic groups as the mother of witches. It is Hecate that is said to have taught the first women witchcraft. Given her rather large realm of influence and being the guardian of the crossroads, you can understand why she often appears in Samhain celebrations. Everyone's relationship with her is different, but my relationship with Hecate honestly reminds me of that teacher figure who wants you to be better and consequently is very strict. I can best equate it to a ballet instructor who's circling you like a hawk, ready to correct even the slightest bit of problem with your form. Whenever I've spoken with her, whether it was through meditation, my pendulum, or even tarot, she's very abrupt and to the point. Sort of like, yes, I'm invested in you and I want you to be better, but dang it, I'm on a schedule and I got things to do. Honestly, I see a lot of her in Lore Olympus's Hecate, which makes me kind of happy. Now for me, Samhain would not be complete without an actual Samhain ceremony, and I'm going to describe a little bit what that's like to you. It usually first consists of invoking Persephone to be our guide to the underworld. Metaphorically, walking with the goddess of rebirth is a good reminder that even if some of our ventures didn't make it, that doesn't mean we can't start again. We take stock of what didn't work and why, and with this we're able to refocus what can be reborn and what seeds are best left unsown. I find Persephone's energy a bit more gentle than Hecate's, comforting. She's not bubbly per se, but it's a difference in being that strict ballet teacher and gently helping you up, brushing you off, and encouraging you to try again, maybe attempting it from a different angle. Persephone's energy sort of reminds me of the same sort of fire I get when I get to work with Brigid from the Tuatha De Danann. I'll talk more about Brigid when we get closer to Imbolc, but thank gods for Brigid. Brigid is like your biggest fan when it comes to making art. My little coven is full of actors and artists and dancers and singers, and anytime we feel down about our current artistic endeavors or have an idea that we're like, nah, it's dumb, everyone will be like, Brigid doesn't think it's dumb. Sorry, that's totally unrelated, but it makes me smile every time I think about it. Anyway, through Persephone, we join with Hades. I use that time with Hades to honor the dead, as well as let go or metaphorically bury anything I've been holding on to that's just not serving me or working. It's also important to give yourself space to mourn the loss of those things that didn't work out. When I say mourn, I do not mean wallow. To me, Hades' energy has always seemed very kind of like Captain Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, very thoughtful, but fairly stoic and not too prone to large displays of emotion. Honestly, I don't really work with a Theoi that often, unless it's around Samhain, and even then it's just these three. Honestly, my relationship with these three deities is one of the reasons I was first initially drawn to Lore Olympus. Also, this year I started streaming at Scabby Rooster as a part-time character on the Demi Dozen, where I play the reincarnation of Andraste. And though I know they know it's just a game, I feel weirdly awkward about approaching this year at Samhain because of that. From there, after an evaluation of the past and letting the seeds that I don't want to try to plant again fall to the wayside, I say goodbye to the two lovers and I invoke Hecate. With Hecate at the crossroads, I reach out to the spirits and the fae. If I'm doing any scrying or divination, whether it be with my pendulum or tarot cards, I do it then. I also like to set my intention towards those seeds I'd like to replant and what I can do to sort of nourish the soil, so to speak. Hecate is usually the one who delivers the hard, blunt messages I need to be reminded of. And when it's time to leave, it's her that leads us out of the underworld. It's a very rough overview of the ceremony I typically go through for Samhain and how I work with these three deities on this holiday. There are also offerings for the deities, the spirits, and the fae that I place on the altar, and all of these are dealt differently when cleaning up. Hecate's, for instance, should be left at a crossroads and in a place that you can, once you've set it down, you can kind of turn around and not look at it as you walk back. Now that's the actual spiritual ceremony part of Samhain for me, but as I explained, it goes from sunset on the 31st to sunset on the 1st, so as part of Samhain, I also try to go for a nature walk and sort of witness the world changing, but that isn't super possible in Los Angeles in October. We don't really get in autumn. We have at least one big meal where we get to nom on tasty, harvesty foods and foods that represent aspects of the holiday, including pomegranate seeds. I love to mull cider or wine. It's delicious. I actually try to do that prior to the ceremony so that some can be used as libations. Fun fact, libations strictly means the beverage that you pour out as an offering for the gods. I'm not sure why it became just synonymous with beverage, but that's what libation actually meant. And now it's like, would you like some libations? I shall take this Starbucks cup and I shall pour it upon the ground for Hecate. She'd probably like it. Pumpkin chai. That shit's good. I try to have white votives that I can place in my star lantern and guide the spirits throughout the holiday. We tell family stories. This year, Angelique and I will be getting a place for just the two of us, so we'll be cleaning and reflecting and preparing for a new chapter of our lives and doing a language check-in. We do language check-ins fairly regularly, but something like Samhain is a very good reason to do one again. just in case. We carve jack-o'-lanterns because 1, it's fun, and 2, these originated as temporary guardians to keep out any malevolent energies or spirits from your home. So they're both fun and practical. And that's more or less Samhain according to me and how I tend to celebrate it. Also, now you have some insight into my relationship with Hades, Persephone, and Hecate, and why it's sometimes a little awkward for me when talking about them in regards to Lore Olympus. In the next month or so, that reflection and introspection will continue as we come to a time of rest, continuing to evaluate and prepare the soil, so to speak, before the rebirth of the year and Yule and solstice. I hope that this small insight into how I celebrate the holiday was fun for you. I tried to give a good overview, but not overwhelm you too much with information. I didn't realize how nervous I was initially sharing this very personal thing to me, considering I've been very open and honest about very personal things to you, but for some reason, since I've never really spoken that much about my religious practices on a personal level, it shook me. It shook me something fierce, kindred. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please let me know with a share and a thumbs up. If you also practice or are just curious about anything I said, or if you'd even like another video like this one, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you have a wonderful Samhain, or Halloween, or Dia de los Muertos, or whatever holiday you decide to celebrate today, or even if it's just a Thursday for you, I hope it's amazing. Keep on the windy side of care, kindred, and until next time, stay curious.